everybody. My name is Andrea, and I'm here to deliver you my speech, which is called At the Helm of Our Own Future. Have you ever heard of the chronotope? Well, literature and philosophy basically refer to it as the configuration of time and space and some possible relations between those two, but we are no writers, nor we are all philosophers here, so I'll simply refer to it as the right person at the right time. We live in an age when people sometimes choose to believe in miracles, to allow the unaccountable to take control over all kinds of situations. They would even engineer their own little universe and nourish it with dreams and hopes rather than face their reality that comes knocking on their door. We are used to calling them dreamers, but do you know what I believe? I believe that they are the ones guiding reality. They have the power to imagine, to visualize, and to eventually design their future according to their own beliefs and imagination. You see, we neglect the fact that destiny's deepest roots are grounded inside each and every one of us. We hand our faith on a plate, making it equivalent to making plans and putting up schedules and doing everything by the book. But let me ask you a question. What is this book that you are holding in your hands that gives you so much certainty of what's going to happen next? Is it that easy to look upwards at the stars and predict one's fate? Horoscopes, astrology, numerology, they seem to know it all undoubtedly, but mankind, open your eyes. There is no assurance or guarantee when it comes to the future. Actually, fate has a quite sadistic way of playing with our convictions. Firstly, it makes us believe we have everything under control, only to end up changing its direction completely, all in the blink of an eye. Therefore, do we depend on the future? Or is the future the one actually depending on us? Because there is no way humanity can somehow intervene in the passing of time. We remain frozen and helpless in front of life's unexpected turns. We cannot ignore the past as it lives inside of us and guards us from becoming creatures of the same old habits or even from reiterating mistakes we've sworn to never repeat again. Thus, we can never grow apart from time and who it just gradually made us into. We can only grow together with it. We can by no means predict it, but neither, I dare say, should we be its slaves. The world is evolving at such an insane pace that nowadays you can actually modify the DNA structure inside living cells, which basically means that epigenetics made it possible for people to change certain parts of their genome in case they didn't find them proper. Obviously, that's far from being the case, since the technique has exclusively been used to alleviate symptoms of diseases they are hardly ever experienced before, but still, the impact it produces over humanity is unbelievable. It even turns out to be a little bit scary, don't you think so? The fact that the world is moving so fast can sometimes be hard to handle. Time turns out to be as fragile as a strand of rain, and the future seems to be nothing but a permanent diffraction of this very moment we are living, because this very moment is the only time fragment we have under control, the only piece which is given to us, so that we can shape it in order to create, to develop, to evolve. Science, literature, arts, everything has gone this far because people believed in the power of innovation. Research, for example, is one of the proofs that people still believe in future. They still believe they are capable of writing it themselves. After all, the world's greatest inventors, such as but not limited to Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, are nothing but gifted, ordinary minds with a brilliant purpose and an unbreakable ambition who relentlessly sought for the best they could give. Because this is how future is born. By people coming up with the story and making it happen. Now, or maybe never again, because the truth is, irrespective of our actions, time is still going by, and as I have previously stated, there is no way we can oppose to that. The only thing that makes a difference in the end is whether we live this life truly and profoundly, or simply existed throughout it. Whether we put up a meaningful and memorable struggle, or just went with the flow. Whether we actually made a change in this world, or simply allow the world to change us. People, we only have one life. It is our duty not to make do with what we already have, but instead it is our destiny to invent, to cross barriers, to create galaxies of mind-design theories, to aim for the unattainable. It is our duty to acknowledge evolution and to believe in it unreservedly with all our hearts. It is our duty to be keen on living this very moment, as it only happens once, and can be, alas, beyond recall. We only have one life. It is our duty to live it as fully as possible. Thank you for your attention.
You're kindly invited to ask questions, please.
This kind of a mechanism is good for a small amount of gifted people, but would you really trust the decisions of people that are uninformed and uneducated?
Sorry, can you repeat? Because
Yeah, sure. This kind of thing is good for the small amount of people that are gifted, but would you really trust the decisions of people that are uneducated and uninformed?
Thank you for your question. Well, obviously this kind of people exist on Earth, unfortunately, and I think that the question we should ask ourselves is not whether we should trust them or not, is whether we should do something about it or not. They have the same chances as we do, and they should have the same chances as we do to have this kind of choices, to make this kind of choices. And I believe that the thing we should do is to encourage them, and to teach them, and to educate them, because they didn't get the chance. Not everybody gets born with a lot of luck and with, I don't know, a lot of money or with a lot of motivation. And I think we should do that for them. We should replace what they didn't get the chance to have when they were born.
Thank you. Okay, please. Yes.
If in the present you can change the future, do you think that the past could possibly have an effect on the future as well?
Thank you for your question. Obviously, the past is irretrievable. It's something that happened, it should remain there, but the past can influence what we do now, because we have the chance to learn from our mistakes. We cannot change what happened. It did happen, but we can change our perspective on what happened. We can see things differently, and because we can see things differently, we can act differently in the future. And I think that is how the past could influence the future somehow, by influencing the present.
One more question.
Yes, please?
Do you think that an ordinary person can become a genius by the time of his life?
Thank you for your question. I think that this thing with becoming a genius is very, very relative. Like, who are we even to consider who is a genius and who is not? I think everybody gets the chance to become a genius in their own way, because everybody is unique and everybody can do something remarkable if they really want to do something. So yes, I do believe that everybody can become a genius, but if you mean something like the persons I spoke about earlier, like Thomas Edison or Albert Einstein, obviously, as it happened in the past, not everybody became a genius in the past, so probably not everybody will become one today. But as I said, I believe that genius is supposed to mean something else to humanity.
Thank you.
All right. I'm really glad to be standing here in front of you today, and in case anybody's wondering what I'm wearing around my neck, well, it is my pleasure to present to you my scout scarf. To outsiders, it may look kind of silly, but to us scouts, it's quite of a big deal. It makes sure that the back of my neck doesn't get burned, and also it's something that I can tie my arms with in case I break one of them, which I hope never happens. However, I was quick to learn that even though we can use our scarves for so many things, this is not the main reason why people wear them. Well, they have a deeper significance for us. Usually there's a ceremony where you get your first scarf for the promise that you will try to make the world better, that you will help other people, and that you will do good. And it might sound like a cliche to you, but I believe that intuitively almost all people want to make the world better, all people want to help others, all people want to do good and leave something good behind. However, the problem is that some of them forget how they can make it, or simply don't know how to make it, or simply forget that they can have an impact on the world in the first place. And I believe that the Scouts have never aborted from this path, and here is why. Well, when people are faced with the question, what do you think that the world will look like in 20 years, there's usually two types of them. There will be A, the people who have a clear picture in front of their eyes, Like the cliche thing of robots are going to get out of control and bring doom to humanity. Or maybe something more optimistic, like in 20 years, maybe there will be robots who will bring food for every starving child in this world and help everyone. You see, these predictions may or may not be right because there's such a wide array of factors and questions that determine every possible outcome. And this is why so many people, just like myself, fall into the second category, which is the people who simply cannot have a clear picture in front of their eyes because they feel like everything is too unpredictable. And the question of who is very, very important here. Because chances are a hunger-solving robot will not come out of the blue because we pray for it or because we try to create it with our mind power. Somebody will actually have to go to engineering school and study hard and work hard, and then after years of research and development finally release it and maybe then collect their Nobel Prize, but that's a whole another story. The point is that somebody would have to work for that. But before that, there is a step that so many people forget to take into consideration, which is, first of all, you have to make sure that it suits you, this job suits you, and you would be the right person to do it. Because I could try and become an engineer and make this robot and help a lot of people and starving children of Africa, but I can barely pass my math class right now. So maybe if I would try this, A, I wouldn't be able to do any good because I would never make it, and second of all, I might end up feeling really useless and feel like I have no power over any outcome in this world at all. So I believe that we should first make sure that our aptitudes suit what we want to do for the world and work with that. And I believe that this is the reason why Scouts are being so successful. This is the reason why for the past century that they've been existing for, they have never left the path that they started with. You see, first of all, Scouts take young men and women and teach them that they could make a difference. And especially when they are surrounded by other young men and women who share their beliefs and their views and have similar goals to them. And second of all, it's because Scouts don't tell anyone that they should make it all. You know, every time you go to a Scout camp, there will never be somebody who does it all. There will always be someone who makes the fire and makes sure everybody's safe around it, and someone who cooks, and someone who takes care of the wounded and the ill. So it teaches people that they can work with what they have to bring their impact, their positive impact on their societies and their communities. And I think that's great. And I think that if we could apply this pattern on a larger scale, we would waste far less potential. Don't get me wrong though, the point of my speech here was not to convince you to become a Scout. You don't need to wear one of these to know what's right for you or to make a difference in the world. You just have to start with the right mindset. And it doesn't even have to be a change that helps the poor children of Africa or anyone else really. So many of you probably have something in their lives that they want to change, like going to a job interview that they're too afraid to go to, or change schools because they feel like the current one don't fit them, or get out of a toxic friendship or relationship. So, I'm a Scout. I have learned how to make this knot. I have learned how to pitch up a tent. However, the most important thing of all is that I've made a commitment. Not for the sake of the poor children of Africa, not for the sake of anyone else really, but for the sake of myself. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Thank you.
Questions? Okay.
Do you think change is always a good choice? Well, it depends what kind of change you refer to. There is always positive change and negative change. I like to believe that people are more directed towards positive change, but we have so many examples in history where it surely wasn't the case. So I think it really depends on the intentions of the one who makes the change. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
If someone dreams to work in a certain profession, do you think they should drop this dream if they don't have certain capabilities or talents that would help in that profession more than normal?
It depends on how they feel about working towards that, if it's a pain to them, if the ascension in this career is a pain to them, then they should abort it, definitely. But if they like to see themselves growing in a field that maybe they were not so made for, then it's their choice whether they choose to stay on that path or not. Thank you.
Okay?
Do you think we can bring a valuable contribution to our society through individualistic means?
Well, I think that sometimes when you try to benefit yourself, you end up benefiting others as well. Because a sad person or a person that is not happy with themselves will seldom have any positive impact or anyone else or anything else. So I think that sometimes when we try to bring a good change to the world, we have to start with ourselves. So yeah, thank you.
As the Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw said, life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. Truly, life is a creation, a gift we can build, shape, and modify as we please. But as we busily create, do we have a clear vision of our future? Can we see the finished product in our mind's eye, or are we adding pieces to the puzzle day by day, hoping that some of them might be the right fit? The majority of us take life as it comes. We are focused on approaching events, and we often don't think in the long term. But broadening our vision leads to totality of being. The word vision came from the Latin visionem, meaning wisdom. So the more wisely we think about our future, the more fulfilled we'll feel. In fact, this is what we have been doing from a very early age. You know, children used to ask their parents about their future. I used to do this in my childhood. And meditating about this idea, Doris Day song came into my mind. When I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what will I be? But after a while, I suddenly stopped. I stopped worrying about it. I stopped asking myself about my future. I stopped communicating with my mother. This is what the vast majority of teenagers do. On my own journey so far, I have realized that all our visions can become reality as a result of three factors: creativity, perseverance, and action. But what if the coin flips and we, as our present-day selves, offer advice to an older, more warm vision of ourselves? What if we can foresee our future by creating it? This is the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, I decided to write a letter to my future self, in order to make you visualize the future that I would like to create for myself. That comfort zone meant not only to inspire me, but also to motivate me to pursue my dreams and reach my goals. My name is Christina, and I will invite you to listen to my letter. Dear future self, take a breath. Look down at your 2 feet. Where are they right now? Look around you. Do you see nature? Go touch the leaves. Go pick a flower and deeply inhale its beautiful fragrance. Do you hear birds? Stop and take a moment to go listen to their music, because not everyone is fortunate enough to be able to hear and enjoy that experience. How have you helped the others? You spent your whole childhood yearning to be an adult, impatiently waiting for the rite of passage that will grant you the maturity, respect, and validation you so desperately sought. But now that you are an adult, all you crave is the sweetly uninhabited moments of play and lack of responsibility that childhood granted you. Life isn't a sprint, it's a long race, and you are not in it just to win. Be gentle with yourself, be messy sometimes. Let it all go. Enjoy it, all of it. You'll have enough time to do everything that you love. So stop stressing so much. You miss the beauty when you're stressed. Be here now. Hug those around you. The sensation of true connection and understanding is the best feeling in the entire world. Money is just a number. It comes and it goes. Love is the true currency. No one lives forever, so be sure to cherish every moment and find comfort in knowing that we are simply souls within these bodies. Life is a gift, so be sure to cherish every second while you're still here. And to conclude, your past and your present are the parents of your future. So who you are right now, your level of awareness about yourself decides how your history will be written and how illuminated your future will be. This is why wise people always tell everybody to live in the present. Self-awareness is an elixir to your life. Thank you.
Okay.
Sometimes depression doesn't go away just by saying feel better or be more positive. What's your advice on people that feel too anxious in order to achieve their dreams and do something?
Okay, thank you for your question. Well, I find myself sometimes in that category, and I tend to tell myself, okay, let the pressure go. Be confident, trust yourself, you can do this. And this is what I will tell to anyone that's anxious and is not confident, because we are superheroes and we can do everything if we want to do something. If we want to, I don't know, graduate to Oxford or something like that, we can do this, but we need to want this.
Motivational advice can be very useful for us because we are young. But take, for example, I don't know, a 60-year-old person. Can this kind of advice work for that person? Can that person convince themselves that they still have time, they have some little people around
For
them?
a 6-year-old person?
60, yeah.
16. Okay, 16 is a very difficult age because we discover things. 16. 60. Okay. Okay, that changes the things. Yeah, it's the same thing because the age is just a number, and if we want to walk on Everest, we can do this. Okay, if we can physically speaking. But let's suppose 60. Okay, my grandma wants to go to Everest. What should I tell her? Don't do this because you can't. Okay, if you feel like doing it, do it because you can do anything. Yes, this is my key.
Okay.
Nowadays, people, be they young or old, they become more material than they used to be.
Yes.
How do you think that affects relations with other people, be they relatives or strangers?
I think that what you just told me is very sad and also true. And this is so sad because some ages ago, people used to love each other because the times was very hard and they didn't have, I don't know, phones. They didn't have a super fancy house, and they had to I don't know, to have each other, because if they didn't have each other, they couldn't succeed. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm glad to be here with you, and to be truthful, I feel a bit nervous. But hey, at our age, what don't teenagers feel? Anyway, I'm in front of you today to share an idea that I hope will stick to everyone listening. I really think that when you will leave this room, the way you view life and the way you make certain decisions might change. And if not a lot, at least a little bit. Who knows, by chance I might even be able to answer some of your questions about life. Now, I'm sure everyone here knows this year's theme. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. When I first said this, it took the eureka a bit to hit me that this actually makes sense. Now, with a little bit of pondering on the sentence, a question rose to my mind. Can I actually change the future? With a little bit of research and some thinking on the matter, I came to a certain answer to this question. Maybe. Maybe? Why maybe, you might think? Well, by a simple definition, the future is a moment that has yet to come, and that follows after the present moment. Sadly, this omits to mention the many possible outcomes the future has, and how complex it actually is. Now, I took this concept of the future, and time as a whole, that we humans came up with, and I broke it into 3 parts: chance, scale, and will. To briefly explain chance, it contains the randomness of the world. For example, that one time when you, or me, at some point, tripped over air. Or that other time when someone you knew, or you yourself, got to randomly receive a prize. It is the wild card of the mix. Now, looking forward at scale, it revolves around the size and complexity of our goals. The bigger your goal is, the more it will challenge your will to hold on to it. Now, looking at the human will that we possess, I see it as the biggest factor that influences time. More precisely, the present and the future. That's why when talking about the future, the outcome that is to be changes the more people you count in. Now, before I go any further, I want to ask you a question, and please raise your hands if you agree. Have you ever been afraid of something you thought was going to happen? Yes, it happens to most of us. Well, 500 years ago, Michel de Montaigne, a philosopher of the French Renaissance, said, "My life has been filled with terrible misfortune, most of which never happened." Based on this quote, there was made an experiment. People were asked to write down things that worried them over a period of time. At the end of the experiment, 85% of what people wrote down they were afraid of never actually happened. This test shows that most of our fears are irrational and they are mostly only in our heads. Now, when I think about my past, I have a perfect moment for this. The second time I went fishing in my life, it was me and my dad at the lake. I had my fishing rod and bait at the ready, and then I waited. Before I knew it, I caught a fish. All I had to do was unhook it, and I did. By now you can guess that the first time I went fishing didn't go as well. I was too afraid to touch the fish. Now, what does this mean? It shows that through will, you can achieve your goals. But fears, worries, and insecurities are a few of the many things that makes our wills falter. The fear of an event that has yet to come is the cause of many defining moments in people's lives. There are actually many people that are afraid of the day when you have to wake up with bills on the front door ahead of the actual moment happening. Now, what does this mean for our future? Does it mean that the world has its odds against us? Does it mean that I should be afraid when I think about tomorrow? My personal opinion and answer to this is that you shouldn't fret. The future is only a concept we came up with. It is far too complex and too flawed to be a certain thing in any way. And because we don't live in the future, we live now. Like the pen of a writer on paper, we only have the white sheet ahead of us. There are no paths or hints. You make mistakes, you cross them over, and you continue on living. Don't say I'll work hard tomorrow when you plan to slack off now. Our will is what makes our goals come true. By holding on to them and working our way towards them, they become a present-day reality. This same will is what builds the world around you. The way you are inside reflects on the outside through your will. In conclusion, it is okay to think about the future as it lets you prepare for it. But instead of fearing it, overcome this fear by willing so now. And the goal you want to achieve and the path you want to take in this life will always come true as long as you have the will to hold on to them. And who knows, with a little bit of self-made luck, you might even get more than you expected. Thank you.
Despite all of our flaws and fears, do you think that one can still motivate themselves to be successful?
Now, I want to make one thing clear. Motivation is something that I wouldn't say it goes well with people. We try to motivate ourselves, but we find reasons and reasons to not do something. What really motivates us is overcoming a fear. Because a fear is something that you're afraid of. It is something that makes you, oh, I don't want to approach that. So overcoming a fear is what really motivates us. And although we are scared of it, once you bite through that fear and you go over it, it is the best feeling you could ever have. Since you can achieve your goal and you will be able to do this over and over again. You shouldn't let something hold you down, or you shouldn't find some false motivation.
What happens when we think so much in the future that we forget to live in the reality in the present?
Sadly, we do this nowadays a lot. I still do that at times. I worry about, for example, coming here, I was worried I wouldn't make it because the traffic in the capital is horrific, let's be honest about it. But someone that really helped me to calm down and to live in the present and enjoy the comfort of my car while I was waiting in the traffic jam was my mother. And she was really helping me keep calm and live the present and enjoy sitting with her and talking with her, instead of fearing of what was the soon-to-come future, and which, as you can see, ended up well, as I'm here.
Do you believe that fear cannot have any benefits at all?
Well, fear is something natural. It's what keeps us alive. It's from the time when we still used to walk on four legs. Sadly, not only does this keep us alive, but it also has its drawbacks. So it makes us not want to approach something, not because we're afraid of our life, but because we're afraid of all what others think. This is a problem that it is within all of us. We care too much for what others think instead of caring of what we think. Now, don't take me wrong. It is okay to take advice and to get feedback, but what is most important is to listen to your heart and to your mind and do what you think is right. The feedback you get is a plus. You can either listen to it or not.
Welcome to the year 2028. There are no flying cars, we still haven't colonized Mars, and most of us here are still in our 20s. Now, let's return to our times. My name is Oksana Halat, and frankly, it is quite difficult for me to picture my life in 10 years. That is why, today, I am going to talk to you about dividing future, fearing it, and finally, controlling it. Sometimes, the future may appear distant, cloudy. We end up thinking about it like a time that will never come. In reality, we are faced with our futures daily, whether we're deciding on a spot to have dinner, or we're trying to figure out what to do for a living. But how far away is the future? Usually, it is divided into two categories, short-term and long-term future. Individuals, such as you and I, tend to see the future on a short term, a month, a year, 5 years maybe. Scientists, however, view it on the long term, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. But even so, all of humanity alike has always been intrigued by what the future may hold. And we've seen this increasing interest since the dawn of times, with fortune tellers, astrology, but most of all, with literature. In his book, 1984, George Orwell pictures the future as a dark world ruled by communism, while Ray Bradbury sees the future simply as the world we know boasts in Fahrenheit 415. Like them, we are all trying to make our own predictions, our own plans for the future. But the sad reality of our lives is that, according to experts, almost all of us live under the false impression that we always have more time. For me, it was cool. It seemed to never end. I thought I would wake up and go to school forever, until one day I woke up to realize that I am graduating high school this year. By the time 2018 will be over, most of my life would have changed. Last Christmas, it was time for my family and I to attend a yearly family reunion. So off I go, thinking that I'm out of the woods. There won't be any embarrassing childhood stories. But instead, here comes the question. Have you decided on university yet? Well, I haven't. Needless to say, my family was shocked. While giving them time to recover, I took the time to think. I realized it wasn't that I didn't know what I wanted to do. It was the fear. I am not ready to move across the country and live without my family. But if I were to wait until I was ready, I would be waiting for the rest of my life. So, there you have it. I admit, I'm scared. I'm terrified of my future, and it isn't something easy to say. Where will I be in 5 years? In 10 years? I'm not sure where I'll be in 6 months. My mom came to the rescue though, as mothers usually do, and she told me that if you are afraid, it only means you're about to do something really, really brave. I get to live my future. I get to create it. Sure, there are things out of my control. That's just what life is like. But will I let my future be written for me? No, thank you. I'll write my own, but I'll be using a pencil instead of a pen. There is one saying that goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So it is pretty fair to say that some of us believe we cannot alter the future at all, right? On the other hand, the rest of us believe that the future can be easily changed by something small as a butterfly's wing. Actually, a study conducted by the University of Michigan shows that we are almost equally divided when it comes to this matter. 49% of people believe the future to be set in stone. while the other 51% believe it can easily be changed. Now let's be honest. We cannot control the future, but we can mold it. It is difficult for humankind to accept that we are not almighty. We cannot write our future in bold. Instead, we must realize that we have the power to tilt the scale, just enough to make a difference. It always seems impossible until it is done. We are the ones who will live our future. We can try to shape it, but it won't look exactly as we imagine it. So let me tell you the secret to predicting the future. You have to live it first. Just as Dorothy had to take a journey to the Great Oz, although she was frightened and sometimes lonely, we too must conquer our fears and take the journey to the great tomorrow. Thank you.
What's your biggest fear the biggest fear that comes into your mind when you think about the word future?
My biggest fear when it comes to the future is that in a few months I won't be living at home and I have to make a choice that will influence my life, and it is a hard choice. I'm afraid that I might make the wrong choice. That's my biggest fear.
You mentioned dystopian literature in your speech, and I wanted to ask you, wouldn't you say it's more of a warning and less of a prediction?
Thank you. Yeah, you could be right. There is a point of view. I truly believe that utopian fiction is not necessarily a warning, but is a prediction for the future, the very future, as in, I don't know, 300 something, 2000 something, because as you know, in George Orwell's book, he talks about cameras and how we're going to be filmed, and his prediction has actually come true, because look around, we are filmed anytime, everywhere. So, although it might seem exaggerated, I think it might come true.
Yes. First of all, congratulations on your speech.
Thank you.
As for my question, do you believe that time can ever be tamed?
Time. Wow. Time is an invention, it's something we created, we humans created. I don't think it can be tamed. I think it just flows, and it depends on us how we take it, how we imagine it, how we work with it. It is our invention, so can we tame it or can we not? It depends on us. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Károly Hegedűs, and the title of my speech is Glass Half Empty, Glass Half Full. And as everyone probably already knows, the topic of discussion for today was whether or not the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So, how do we actually go about this? What does this very peculiar topic truly entail? Because I feel like it's a statement that says a lot and that we really should immediately address. But when I was first faced with this topic, I didn't really know how to approach it, how to tackle such a sensitive theme. And so I took a deep breath and gave a bit of thought to the questions that arose with this topic. Why do we actually try to predict our future? I mean, prediction has always been part of our process of thought, even though nowadays we really like to stress on how we should only focus on the present. The past is a place to draw wisdom from. The future, a time we should expect, but not indulge ourselves into. But let's be completely honest here. Nobody can really, truly ignore the idea of looking ahead. Because it's something that comes naturally to us, something that's etched into our very beings. Craving knowledge, desiring progression, I think these are impossible without relishing in the idea of a very often completely unpredictable future. And that's okay, because it's something that defines us as people, something that defines us as individuals even. But what are really these predictions that all of us have mentioned here today? In a very simplistic point of view, I think they are the manifestation of our own imagination and of our ideals. So let's take it this way. Say you are creative enough to build a prediction. Why not make it come to life actually? Take the greatest example from our history, which is actually that of humankind, as we have progressed in technology, science, economy, and so much more by creating and inventing it ourselves. So I believe that we, as individuals, should be able to achieve the same feats. But, of course, I realize that it's never going to be that easy. That taking such a huge step ahead will always require strength, and most of the time, it will also be out of our comfort zone. And anxiety towards all that is understandable and very often unavoidable too. That's why there are some who are afraid they won't make it either way, that there's no point trying at all because they're not willing to take that risk and step out of their comfort zone. But I believe that even when we're faced with failure, discouragement isn't the most obvious answer. Effort towards anything you wish to achieve should never be viewed as fruitless harbor. That's why there's also a proverb that I like to reference, which is also the title of my speech today, and it goes, glass half empty, glass half full, either way you won't be going thirsty. Meaning, no matter what you do, be it success or failure, you will always end up with something enriching your experiences and of course, yourself as a person too. So never be afraid of trying, because work and effort will never be associated with shame. But then, there's also other kinds of people who aren't necessarily afraid of the concept of failure, but rather they are afraid of the repercussions their future career choices might bring upon them, like the high expectations of others, or social judgment is what they might fear. Rejection, claims of unoriginality. I think more often than not, these are the reasons why we're just reluctant to take it upon ourselves to invent and create something. But J.K. Rowling once said, anything's possible as long as you have enough nerve. So remember that if you're the one doing it, it will always be the closest it can get to your own ideals and your predictions. My grandma always used to tell me that life is just a repetition of making regrets and experiencing failures. So I once sarcastically asked her, what's the point of living then? To which she only smiled and replied, it's to make even better regrets and mistakes. Reaching a goal is meant to be a bundle of trials and one of worthwhile hardships. And that's something that I'd like each and every one of us here today to reflect on. It is worthwhile. And remember, the future comes from within. First, inner realization, and then outer projection. Thank you for hearing me out.
There are cases in which some people gave their best and all to their dream and ended up with an empty glass and a big third. What do you think was their mistake?
I believe that judging what somebody's mistake was without knowing them is artificial and it just won't work. And so mistakes are for each of their own. People who make mistakes and end up with something missing from their lives is because they did something wrong. And as I mentioned in my speech, it is something that is mainly an experience for us. Mainly a base for us to build on and to become better as people. So in a way, you can consider that such a failure is just something that propels us to our future endeavors in our life.
You said that this year's theme is a sensitive topic. Can you elaborate why is that?
You probably already know that there's been a study of how children and young people in general are becoming more and more sensitive towards their future, towards whatever problems they have nowadays. Because as we progress as humans, we become also more mature as time comes. And so I believe that this year's topic, the topic of future, is something that very sensitive for us during these times, and especially for children and young people who are trying to start a career, to step out of their comfort zone, which is actually their home or school or whatever.
Let's say I fail horribly at something. How can I, in those immediate moments after, convince myself that it's okay and move on and manage to find good things even in failure?
As I've said, outer projection comes only after inner realization. So facing your fears and facing your failures is something that is going to be the best building material towards your future. And it's going to be something that's going to fare as one of your greatest memories, to which you can think back and say, oh right, this was something that made me achieve this. This was something that helped me get here where I am. And it's going to fill you with pride. Thank you.
Passions. May they be the usual ones like chemistry or biology, or the wacky ones such as juggling. What is certain is that every single one of us has them. Some are good at football, some are able to play the piano, others are gifted in the dangerous art of sword swallowing. What connects these people together is that they do what they enjoy and know best. And you know what? These people are happy. They do not worry about the next day. They do not think that they have to go to that dreaded workplace, see their sour boss every morning, or listen to one of Mike's The Funny Guy's jokes, because working is a joy for them. They built up their future around what they knew was their calling, and now they reap the rewards. A happy life. But all that remains is an extremely puzzling dilemma. Can happiness be achieved without passion or talent? Well, today I am going to deliver two different stories. Stories about talent and the act of reaping it. For the first one, let me introduce John to you. You see, John is a common lad now, in his 30s, works in a 9-to-5 job as a manager at a computer development corporation. Every morning he wakes up, eats, kisses his wife and 2 kids, waving goodbye, and leaves to work, just to return 8 hours later to eat and sleep. Rinse and repeat, stuck in a cycle until the end of his life. Sure, he makes a pretty beautiful sum of money every month, but I find his lifestyle sad. What if I told you that John wasn't always like that? During high school, he was in the school's orchestra, playing the violin on a regular basis. He had a real talent at that, but then, when the time came for him to choose a college, his mother said firmly, "Violin playing won't bring you money. Look, your uncle is making a lot of money just working on computers. Do that too." These words killed the prodigy in the blink of an eye. The main headlines in the newspapers, like the return of Yehudi Mehudin or the concerts with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, just vanished. John wasn't a talented boy anymore. He was just a money-making robot, like many other adults nowadays. The second story, though, has a different plot. In the middle of it, there's a boy called Lee. You see, Lee was a smart high school student. He was able to easily pass whatever exam the Korean educational system threw at him. But he didn't excel or even like any of the subjects taught there. What he was good at was making puzzles and playing video games. Every day after school, he would boot up his PC and play for a few hours a game then, a world phenomenon now, League of Legends. He did his best in order to succeed in this field, and boy did it pay out. After being noticed by one of the best esports organizations, Lee Faker Sang-hyuk became in less than 4 years the best player that League has ever seen, a 3-time world champion and one that receives millions of dollars just for doing what he loves. I think it's time to share what I experienced so far, me and my next day. Maybe you're wondering, who am I? What are my talents, my passions, my goals in life? If yes, well, let's start with this short story. Ever since the first grade, I studied math at school. I practiced a lot, I took part in competitions, I won prizes and medals. I had a blast doing all of this. But as time went on, I felt that this calling kept getting quieter and quieter, almost silent. Even though I felt lost, as Tim Noski, a high school basketball coach, claimed, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So when I needed to interact with people from Italy, Poland, or England as part of an international partnership in my school, I knew that English, or to be more precise, speaking, will be the next step I will take. To my mind, the English language is the most important tool of communication. It's universal, so just like math, is easily understood by the entire planet. Ideas, thoughts, concepts, easily explained by one of these two languages. They work hand in hand, and that's why I truly believe that my transition from a math enthusiast to an apprentice speaker is the right choice. It makes me develop a lot, and I'm really happy for that, as I know that to be good or at every given subject is almost a gargantuan task, one that requires a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, and a ton of passion. What can we notice from these stories? That we need to take initiative. We need to build up our future, not receiving it from someone, just let it happen. Be whatever you want to be. Take action and people will follow you. You don't have to be a manager or someone famous, a leader as the dictionary says. You just have to be you. To do what you do best, to try your hardest in everything. And I'm sure that if we all do that, eventually we will become our own leaders. Beacons of inspiration for the ones to come after us. Just remember, wood burns because it has the right stuff in it. A human is famous because it has the right stuff in it. Just find it, the seed that is your talent, and grow it into a majestic oak called future. Starting with your next day. Thank you for your time.
Okay? Yes?
Can people find meaning and be happy with a life that's no special in any way, that is ordinary, a life where they didn't invent anything or did anything objectively special?
Well, I don't believe that an ordinary life means a life without talent. You can be talented at any ordinary thing. You can be talented as a carpenter or talented as a tailor. I mean, happiness is in talent and passion and in working in something with motivation. You need to be motivated to do what you do every single day. If you are motivated and you love what you do, I think happiness is just a step away. Thank you for your question.
Can you describe from, obviously, your vision, your alter ego, the best version of yourself?
The best version of myself is one that doesn't rely on anyone. It's independent. It works I will work what I want to work. I will not answer to anyone. I want to be my own leader. Thank you for your question.
Yes?
You were talking about League of Legends and League Paper.
Yes.
Do you think he still enjoys playing the game that he was playing for the last 6-7 years, 10 to 12 hours a day? Don't you think that he's a money-making route as well, just with a different job?
Well, I watched the World's Final last year, or his streams, and he always has a happy attitude when playing the game. And on the other side, during the World's Finals, which he lost 3-0, he lost it very painfully, he cried on stage in front of almost 300 million viewers. I think that is dedication on his part to what he does, and it truly shows his love for the game. Thank you for your question.
There was once a man whose idea united people and nations. His purpose changed the entire perspective of mankind. Does anyone here know what their future looks like? Probably not. However, you are all now thinking of at least one way in which your future may unfold, simply because of my question. It doesn't rest and raises that. We are driven by instinct to doubt and to collect data for solving even apparently insoluble problems. My favorite concept for someone led by constant inner turmoil to do research and to anticipate the future is everyday scientist, defined by the psychologists Nisbet and Ross in 1980. I strongly believe that all human beings are everyday scientists and can create the future by predicting it. Today, I'll support my idea by considering 3 points of view which define the work of an everyday scientist: fundamental, psychological, and technological. Firstly, to explain the fundamental role of an everyday scientist, let's analyze something that affects us constantly: language.
In 1887, the philologist Ludwig Zamenhof designed a new language, Esperanto. It was a mixture of words and structures from languages already existing in the world, such as French, Spanish, German, Portuguese, and Russian. For example, hello in Esperanto is saluton, which is a combination of French and Spanish. The author's main goal was to enable people of all nationalities to make direct exchange of knowledge. On the one hand, Esperanto was an aspiration towards the united world. On the other hand, it was the ultimate creation of an everyday scientist who wanted a change. Despite its failure, the project created a perfect precedent because it degraded the idea of unity into people's minds. The entire political scene changed due to the creation of organizations such as the United Nations or the European Union. Esperanto did not become a universal language because it was artificial, but the necessity of a global means of interaction led to the adoption of English as the main language for international communication. This example shows the true power of everyday scientists and their endless stream of research and questioning. One idea, pursued with ambition, changed an entire world. Secondly, psychologically speaking, we all question our reality because we want to predict the behavior of both ourselves and society. Like devoted researchers, we are future-oriented, but also knowledge-driven. We make connections between cause and effect to devise our predictions. Our observations help us create scenarios in our heads. We are also prone to changing or reinventing parts of our future, and we tend to predict positive outcomes. Psychologists have proved that we often underestimate the amount of money we will spend or contemplate entering stable romantic relationships. That happens because we have an inside approach to prediction, which motivates us to create a target based on imagination, rather than an outside approach, which is based on past experiences. For a better illustration, consider North and South Korea. The ongoing tensions between the two countries led to security concerns regarding the organization of the 2018 Winter Olympic Games. Not only most Korean citizens, but also the entire world wishes the two nations united again. A first step was taken in January, when for the first time after more than 2 years, the two leaders agreed to cooperate. On February the 9th, 2018, North and South Korean athletes marched together as the United Nations under one flag. Their daring hopes may change the course of history. Thirdly, think of all the technological advancement there has been in the last couple of centuries. We may not always be objective and detached, but we can still make plausible predictions and inspire new scientific achievements. Nowadays, we can send people en masse through the project Mars One. My prediction regarding this project is that in 50 years, there will be over 1,000 people living on Mars. And believe me, everyday scientists have had a strong say in this version of reality many have pictured and perfected. In conclusion, the future is a creation of mankind and the people that compose it, billions of everyday scientists. So ask yourselves questions, do research, leave no stone unturned until you find answers, acknowledge your existence as everyday scientists and make this world better. Your ideas may leave an indelible mark on the future of our world. Thank you.
What do you think is the unique characteristic that started wars in history, and what do we as average people can do in order to ignore that or try to behave?
Thank you for your question. One thing that our instinct holds is our wish to become a better individual. And the fact that we want to become a better individual makes us want to do anything in order to achieve that goal. And sometimes achieving that goal may mean literally walking on dead bodies. That means that we may start a war or an argument. That can happen. But what we can do is try not to do something to other people. Try to follow our own path and not disturb someone else's path. That is a great idea in order for us to stop wars, or even some petty arguments. Thank you for the question.
Don't you think that questioning everything can sometimes cause more damage as long as we aren't able to find out every answer?
Thank you very much for your question. It's an interesting one. But the fact that we think makes us believe everything. And believing everything means that we have an opinion about it. And we form an opinion about anything. Politics, economics, religion even. Everything we do is form an opinion. And the first step to forming an opinion is, what is that? Why is that happening? What effects does it have on me and society? Therefore, we question ourselves even when we try to form an opinion on something.
Yes.
In the far future, when most likely many languages and cultures will die off, do you think that the ones remaining might fuse together? And if yes, what do you think the major languages in it would be?
Thank you very much for your question. And due to the fact that we are nowadays living globalization and we realize that some cultures are dying due to the fact that they move to other countries and in that way they are forced to learn the language of the country they live in order to adapt. I believe that the first world powers, countries such as the United Kingdom, France, the countries of Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, the United States, all these will have many people and all these will be the leading countries with their leading languages. I mean, 50 years ago, the main language was not English, it was French. Nowadays, it is English. In 50 years or in 100 years, it may be another language. Who knows? Everything can be created nowadays, and the best way we can do it is to predict this particular idea, that we can create another language that may be better than the other 6,000 already existing in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to begin my speech with one word: time. Mankind is defined by time. It is unquestionably the most valuable resource we have, and yet few of us use it wisely. We complain about how time flies by, how short life is. We're so concerned about the future that we don't enjoy the present, nor contemplate the past. However, we can't change the past, for the ink is dry. We must tend to the future. Perhaps the best way to start is to take a good look at the past, since history is likely to repeat itself, mainly because we never learn from past experiences. History is full of lessons, success and failure, acts of greatness and terrible mistakes. A decision is made in minutes while its consequences felt over centuries. We have survived for millennia, and we have evolved in line with our aspirations, always determined to do the impossible. We have no fish gills, and yet we can survive underwater. We have no wings, and yet we can fly. We always find a way to break record after record, limit after limit. However, despite every step forward, one question remains unanswered. Why are we here? If everyone has a destiny, and the future has already been written just like the past, then what is our purpose? If some supernatural power has it all figured out for us, then our mere existence is just the fulfillment and nothing more. Do you like the idea that you're not in control of your life, that some are destined to fail while others to succeed? Do you really believe that some are meant to be rich or happy while others poor or miserable? Is it really fate or the consequence of our actions? I like to believe that every choice I make matters, and that every path I follow will take me closer to my goals in life. Whether I fail or succeed, at least the choice is mine. Sometimes our decisions can also influence those around us in unforeseeable ways. Society is like an intricate web of relations between people. Our choices can create the circumstances in which others make their own decisions, and vice versa. We each play a significant part in the equation because it is the small yet consistent behaviors that make a difference. We are unique individuals with special skills and talents, but each one of us has the ability to share love and kindness. And it is through these that we have within us the power to change the world. We truly are the architects of our own future, but we have to admit that sometimes the unpredictable can occur. And the smartest thing to do is adapt and be flexible. It may hit in the form of unexpected human actions, bitterly disappointing or surprisingly wonderful, or in the form of circumstances that can lead to disaster or incredible discoveries. It doesn't always come down to mathematical precision when mapping our course in life. Therefore, we should embrace the unpredictable as an opportunity and make the best of it. We should set our goals as high as possible, and although it may seem unachievable, we should try to look within and struggle for becoming better than we are today. Someone once said that no dream is too big, and no dreamer too small. Sheer force of will is the greatest tool humanity can wield in order to create a world where human values like love, honesty, loyalty, and peace define mankind. This perfect world may never be built, but simply trying to create it is a step forward towards greatness. But I must ask you this: are you satisfied with the world we live in, where corrupt politicians can get away with anything? A world where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. A world where money is our overlord and where kindness is a weakness. The time has come. It is our turn to make a difference, and it is up to us to shape the future. But change does not happen overnight. It is a slow process that takes a lot of time. First, we must understand ourselves. Then understand each other, and then work together. Society should not be defined by competition, but by collaboration. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and there will always be someone that completes us. Alone, we cannot solve every problem of the future, but together, we can face it all. Don't fight for money. Don't fight for power. Fight for the day of tomorrow. Fight for a better world. Aim for the moon. And if you miss, you may hit a star. Thank you. Yes, please.
Congratulations. What expectations do you have speaking about the future, about how the world will develop and modify?
I always try to see the full half of the glass. I always try to be positive. And I like to believe that the world will turn to a better tomorrow. Right now, there are the problems that we have with the world, such as global warming, there's racism, countless conflicts between people that destroy countless relations. But then I look to this room, to the people and the ideas that have already been presented. And I think we have such a big chance of making this world so much better than it already is. Yes, please.
No.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Well, congratulations on your speech. What do you think is the biggest inheritance we can pass to our future generations?
I would say knowledge. Everything that we have learned, everything that we have gathered, every experience, thought, and feeling is something that we can pass on. Everything we built. This is the greatest inheritance, our experiences.
Kindness can be often associated to a form of vulnerability. Therefore, nowadays we are facing a wave of cynical behavior, especially online. How should we go about solving this problem?
The reason this wave of cynicalism is popping up everywhere around the world, especially on the internet, is because people see this kindness as a weakness. But I wouldn't say it's a weakness that should be exploited. Just because a person is willing to sacrifice themselves for the betterment of someone else doesn't mean they're weak. I would say they're stronger than everyone else.
In 1887, in a book called The Genealogy of Morals, Friedrich Nietzsche shared with the world a short, simple phrase: there are no facts, only interpretations.
But natural nature could be the subject of many speeches, so in the meantime, hello everyone, my name is Roxana Pascu, and in the following minutes I intend to prove to you that your reality is entirely a matter of perspective, that we do not see things as they are, we see them as we are, and more precisely, we see things the way we program ourselves to see them. And it's because of that I intend to prove to you that the future is just as rebounding. And I'll begin by acknowledging the fact that being concerned about the future is a common and understandable worry. It is only normal to spend much of our time contemplating about our options, our choices, our victories, our mistakes and their consequences, and many, many others. But you see, the funny and overwhelming thing about future is that there is no particular future to predict. Life was not set in stone. You were not born with an instructions manual and an already written story that ends in your death. No, you were just born. And from that moment on, every move you made, along with your personal way to see it and to feel it, resulted in what at some point was the future. Therefore, what happens to us is a combination of actions and outlooks. Therefore, the term predict loses its literal meaning. However, once we understand all of this, predicting can now mean something new. More precisely, predicting can now mean self-knowledge and self-awareness. Predicting can now mean evaluating chances and circumstances and manipulating our own points of view. So, like I said, extremely overwhelming, and it actually is, and Alan Kay, the guy who gave us the quote, he didn't say it would be easy either, and it's not. And in fact, obtaining your ideal future and your ideal self and getting to your goals is extremely difficult, all the way from comprehending yourself, your reactions, your values, your motives to do things, all the way from that to figuring out how to get to what you want given your surroundings. All of these are extremely, extremely hard, but we can take baby steps. We can spend a little more time with ourselves today. We can wake up a little earlier tomorrow. There are in fact several things that can be done in order for us to invent ourselves and our future in a better, healthy way. But the really tricky part is that telling a speech about it or listening to one or generally hearing advice on it, it's not enough. We hear all these ideas that we are talking about today, that people in general are talking about, because everybody has advice on how you should live, everybody has advice on how you should do things in order to succeed. But the problem is that we hear advice and we treat all this advice either as just some nice words that we just hear to make ourselves better or some overused incentives, where the key to constructing your future is also consistency. So it is not about being proactive today because you got inspired. No, it's about being proactive today and tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that, all day, every day, and with a lot of patience and perseverance and many, many other hard things to achieve. It might actually get easier with time. And even if it doesn't, the alternative of hopelessly accepting our miserable fate is much, much worse anyway. So my point to all of this is that, first of all, we sometimes think about these things a little too much, and a lot of these things are out of our control. And second of all, is that we often forget that every reaction that we have is somehow normal. So if you don't manage to be proactive today, it's normal. If you feel panicked today, it's also normal. And you can be a very efficient person, and you can be very successful, and you can be very good at many things you do, and still, let's say, wake up tomorrow and be really scared, and be really panicked, and really not know what to do. It's really okay if you came with a speech today, and you told us the speech in front of everybody, and you are still trying to convince yourself to believe in that speech. All of these are okay. Sometimes we forget all these things. We forget that you can be very good and still have bad times. We forget that a lot of things can be out of control, a lot of things cannot be followed as we planned them. So, to conclude, the future remains mentally absorbing, as it should be. But you see, the real good part about all this, the real fascinating part about our subject today is that we actually do it every day. We invent it every day. Every perspective, every action we choose to embrace shapes tomorrow in a different way. And that means that, partially, the future is simply how we think it will be. So that also means that the only strategy left to adopt is to just think it will be alright and mold it that way. Because, no matter how much we debate it, after all, life is a full impromptu, so might as well try to improvise well. Thank you.
You mentioned baby steps in your speech. What are some baby steps you are ready to take to achieve your goals?
To achieve my goals. Okay, that can be a very, very large topic. So I can give you an example. I do have sometimes problems with my confidence in the sense that I do a lot of things that require life requires confidence. And my baby steps to that are usually trying to get out of the things that make me, I don't know, self-conscious. So that would be talking to people that normally would really scare me because I know they're, I don't know, someone better than me in a certain way, or I believe that in my head. Or another baby step is just go sign up for things I wouldn't normally do because I would be scared, not precisely because I wouldn't think I would be good at it. So these baby steps are just little things you know that trigger you a lot, and you just do them anyway, and hope for the best.
The boy with the glasses. The boy with the glasses. Okay.
Do you think a person suffering from mental disorder has enough motivation and energy to keep working productively?
Well, I believe mental disorders are very different. Depends on what exactly mental disorder you are talking about. So I don't know precisely for any kind of it, but I believe that first of all, a mental disorder should be treated like any other disorder in this world, no matter what its triggers precisely. And with some help in that matter, both professional and from your environment, from everybody's environment, yes, it can be done, surely.
Okay, so you mentioned a Nietzsche quotation.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask you whether you agree with the term absolute truth. So, does absolute truth exist in any form in our world?
Well, the vision of Nietzsche, I know what you're asking. The vision of Nietzsche is kind of a little different from our topic. Honestly, no. I mean, in the context of Nietzsche, no. Not in that certain matter in which things are just where absolute truth, as in given as that by the universe, and in the aspect of things that cannot be changed and cannot be managed. At least not for what we are talking about today, because for what we are talking about today, we speak of truths more as aspects of life that we can actually manage more than the philosophical aspect Nietzsche was talking about for his absolute truth. So thank you.
I have to be honest with you all. I'm the kind of person that worries about a great deal of things, which are more or less likely to happen. Often, I'm worried about not meeting the expectations of my parents or teachers, or that I will embarrass myself in front of a large number of people. Usually, when I think of social interaction, I get really anxious, and being around strangers makes me anxious. Most of all, though, I am afraid of waking up one day without any will to keep living. Fear is a trait deep imprinted in our DNA. It is linked to our conservation instinct. Tens of thousands of years ago, the primitive man would have gone out of his cave with his heart tightly chained to the fear of the unknown, his instinct being his only survival tool. At this time, in this era, the danger of death was imminent. But we're not in the Stone Age anymore, aren't we? Yet, this fear of what we can't understand or predict has preserved itself within the oldest parts of our brains, leading to one of the biggest fears of the modern world, the future. There was a saying, when a man on earth makes plans, God in heaven laughs. Religious or not, we have to admit, not every plan we make works out the way one may think. However, everyone keeps making them, because of the fear not to. Being unprepared for what is yet to come might be the scariest thing in the world. Therefore, people like to deceive themselves to thinking that they're in command of fate, which in my opinion is an invitation to disappointment. Once, I read the story of two brothers whose dad was a bad alcoholic. One brother grew up to be a successful carpenter who never drank. The other brother ended up being a drinker as bad as his dad was. When they asked the first brother why he didn't drink, he said that after he saw what it did to his father, he could never bring himself to even try it. When they asked the second brother, he said that he guessed he learned how to drink on his father's knee. You see, this story is so perfect because it shows you how there are some things in life over which we have no power, like the family you are born in. But also, it shows us how our circumstances do not define us. Let me say that again. Do not let circumstances define you. Do not wait for somebody else to come and save you. Do not think for 1 second that there is a life vest waiting for you each time you feel like drowning. Stop complaining about things that you could have already changed. In October 1772,
A young man arrives in the New York City port with only a bag of books on his shoulder and the hope for a better life in the mainland. This kid was an immigrant. He studied at King's College, volunteered to fight in the American Revolution, became the right-hand man of George Washington during the war, studied law, and helped defending the new Constitution of the United States of America. He became the first Treasury Secretary of the United States and supported the creation of a national bank. Today, we can find him on the $10 bill. Alexander Hamilton was a poor, orphan immigrant from the Caribbean who never let his condition stop him from rising to the highest peaks of society. Jack Ma, the founder and executive chairman of the Alibaba Group, failed to enter university 4 times. After finishing his studies, he applied for 30 jobs and got rejected. He applied for Harvard 10 times and got rejected. Both Ma and Hamilton knew that no matter how hard you fail, there is always a way back to the top. They never waited for life to happen to them because these people were aware that future depends on what you do today. Our work reflects who we are and who we will be in 10 years from now. Malcolm X said, "Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." I used to have a terrible mindset not long ago, thinking how bright my future will be or what a great life awaits me, but I didn't actually work to make it happen. All I did was using the future to escape the reality that if you really want to control your destiny, grabbing the wheel and working hard towards your goals is the only way to do it. And maybe we don't really know what is waiting for us on the other side of the tunnel, or where do we come from. But one thing that everyone is aware of is this very moment, when I acknowledge what impact words have in your lives. By this, I'm designing the future with my own hands and mind. Because nothing in this world matters more than the present, for the present is the only dimension in which you can change something, no matter how small. It was said that something as small as the flutter of a butterfly's wing can ultimately cause a typhoon halfway around the world. Thank you.
So, what is the risk of reaching the opposite danger and being so confident in our work that we do not see the bad things about it anymore?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what is the risk that in our life we become so confident in our work, in what we do, that we do not manage to see what is not so great about it anymore?
I think that risk is getting used to it, falling into a schedule and getting bored of what you do. You always follow a passion or one work field. You like this thing and you keep working for it and you keep giving everything you have for it, but at some point you get bored. Why does that happen? Maybe you didn't actually like it. Maybe you are so caught in working hard and in searching for success that you forget how to be happy in that moment, in that split second. You just forget how to live in the present and just focus on being successful or being the best at that thing. Thank you.
If you were put in a situation to send a message to your future self, what would it be?
I think it would be just don't give up, because everything in this world has been built to make us to want to give up, to want to just stop and quit. Because life is not as easy as we would like. We think that success comes just around the corner, that we follow some steps and we are successful and we won the lottery of life, but it's not that easy. Life isn't just one part, 1 year, 2 years in which you work and you get something. It's not that you reach a peak of your life and then everything just fades away. It's all the time. You just need to be happy all the time, and you need to be willing to live a truly fulfilling life and not forget that no matter how hard life hits you, because that's what it's all about. No matter how hard life hits you, it's about how many hits you can get and just keep going.
Thank you.
The boy at the back.
What do you think about drugs like marijuana? Can they help you not to give up, or do they just mess your life up?
An excessive and dangerous using of drugs is definitely not a good thing. But when we talk about medical marijuana of this kind of medical drugs, it has been proven that they made really, really bad pains in some patients just fade away. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a bad thing when you use it in a dangerous, compulsory and obsessive way, and not in a controlled and actually not necessarily controlled, in a proper manner. And when I say proper manner, I mean medical use. It's one thing when you use marijuana and a certain drug in a treatment for a patient, and it's a whole other thing to just use it for the pleasure that will in time turn into obsession and will destroy you finally. Thank you for your question.
My name is Mira Pop, and my speech is entitled Inventing Predictions and Predicting Inventions. Now, I find it funny how these words, prediction and invention, can actually function both ways. Because when I think about them, I feel like I have to choose. Either between compulsive organization on the one hand, and dreamy imagination on the other. Now, I know that statistics and analysis can help us predict things, and that a good scientific and technical training can help us invent things in the most pragmatic sense of the word. But isn't it also true that it was predictions that enabled prophets to unravel what was yet to pass, to foresee the unknown based on nothing scientific other than their claim of talking to the gods? And another undeniable truth to me is that poets, writers, and artists invent as well, and that their inventions may not make our lives easier, but they certainly make them more beautiful and worth living. So, to begin with, to me, future is a matter of striking a balance between these two ways in which one can perceive prediction and invention. I do expect to be an active agent of my future, by planning some of it. But I also try to leave some room for whatever it is that destiny has to throw my way by inventing in a rather creative way. I plan on cultivating my inner realist, but never to the expense of stifling my inner impractical idealist. So why don't more people do so? Because I personally find it exceedingly worrying that so many people with the potential to essentially change the world still choose to be passive about the future, still choose not to act either because they think it's useless, futile, or maybe because they think they know what's coming next. These people rely on their parents telling them what to do, on their friends telling them where to go, on the media, TV shows, the government, astrology, you name it. Now, I myself must admit that, to some extent, I can relate to this because I believe in destiny. I believe in a stronger power making things happen in the universe. And because of this, I'm quite happy and optimistic and try to stay positive and have a tendency to believe that a lot of things happen for the right reason and that they guide us in the right direction if we know who we are, if we know what our place in this world is and what we believe in. Now, chaos theory. It is a paradox in name and therefore has intrigued me for quite some time, because how can you theorize something chaotic? Well, you can. You can if you think about how a butterfly's wingbat on one side of the world can actually create a hurricane on the other. Now, this is actually a principle in chaos theory, known as the butterfly effect. It's quite popular. And it essentially states that a very small thing can engage huge results. Just as one choice we make today can potentially flip our entire destiny by tomorrow. Now, coming back to the idea of actually taking charge of our future instead of simply letting things happen, there's this story that I'd like to tell you. And it's about an old man who potentially, every night before going to bed, asked God to let him win the lottery. And one night, infuriated that yet another lottery had been won by someone else, he pleaded to God one final time, saying, "Why, God, why don't you let me win this? I ask this of you in every prayer. What, am I not faithful? Are you not listening?" To which God simply responded by saying, "But you haven't even bought a ticket yet."
Now, this simple story speaks volumes to me, for I want to have a ticket ready. This being my share of invention, of taking part in the making that is my own destiny through free will and free choice. Because you cannot choose wrongly. The only wrong thing you can do is not to choose. And in the words of Robert Frost, two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. This way, I try to keep at bay the fear of the unknown that can essentially cripple one's actions. This way, I take the road less traveled by in the hope that it builds my character, my courage, or at least makes me eligible for this huge lottery that is life. So, follow the yellow brick road. Choose either the red or the blue pill. See how deep the rabbit hole goes. Invent your future and buy a ticket. Thank you very much.
As people, we make our own decisions and we have our own choices for certain reasons. But why do you think life is like a lottery, if that's the case?
The reason why I compared life to a lottery is because, again, it's half choice, half conscious choice, and half destiny and improbability. You can buy that ticket and you can say, oh, I went out, I bought that ticket, that is what I did to potentially win at this lottery, to potentially win at life. I made my own choice. But there is 1 in a million chance you'll win. And that is where destiny comes in. And I think that's life. That is, you can try and you can make conscious choices and decisions, but you're never really certain of what the outcome is going to be. Thank you.
Okay.
You talked about the higher power. Do you feel our choices are made for us, or can we make our own?
Thank you. Very, very interesting point. I actually, personally, I am quite undecisive when it comes to this. I feel like I sometimes do something on my own. I say, no, it was my decision, it was my choice, it was my conscience telling me to do that. But where does that idea come from? Is it somewhere else, God or whatever it is that we believe in, or is it actually something that we made up and something that we implemented in ourselves? So I believe that, again, ideas and things like this could be a result of our imagination, of our ideas and stuff like that, but I believe that there is such a power that could potentially influence what we think and what we do and other things.
Thank you.
Hope I answered.
The ancient Greeks thought life to be a thread. At the birth of a man, they believed it was spun and measured and bluntly cut short by the Moirai, the three omniscient goddesses of fate. They had the future laying between them, these three, sinuous and crowded with possibilities, but they knew in their otherworldliness just how to shape it. It was one of the first instincts of civilizations, acquiring this terrible, self-conscious belief that the moment we wake up into this world, our life has already been set up by an undisclosed entity, the length of the thread well measured, a blade set around it ready to snap it short. And it is a belief that has followed humanity through the ages, its metamorphosis organic and continuous. We've called it God's will both when it rained down on our crops and when it didn't. We hurriedly blame Mercury retrograde for missing the bus or losing our favorite pair of earrings. We simply love a good prophecy because, much like the ancient Greeks before us, we are both haunted and comforted by the idea that everything was laid out hitherto, that the amount of joy and suffering we're going to experience in our lives was already rightfully measured, that whatever we do will not matter in the end because those choices were not ours to make in the first place. Even so, we find ourselves tentatively reaching out towards the thread, trying to bribe it with our belief in the zodiac and pious prayers. But oh, how funny it is, trying to bribe an entity that we already believe set in stone, our destiny. Call me an overbearing idealist, but I refuse to believe in any of this. In destiny, in fate, in the idea that I am walking into my future the way I would in an art gallery, merely observing, unable to touch or change anything. That being said, I am not here to shake the very grounds of the beliefs of those who actually believe in fate. I am here to make you question how your belief in fate can affect your conceptualization of the future and to show you that it can limit it in a very negative manner. To do so, I'm going to attempt to answer two fundamental questions. First off, why do we believe in fate? And secondly, how can we shift our perspective so that we can transform a limitation into something that engages us creatively? So, I think that our intimate relationship to fate can be traced back to our fundamental fear of responsibility. Because we have to understand something. When we believe in destiny, in the fact that everything was laid out here though, we give up both responsibility and free will. Our choices were not ours, and also we are not responsible for them. But when you get the destiny out of the equation of the human consciousness, you are left with both a lot of freedom, because your life is yours to do it as you please, and a lot of responsibility, which can be a disturbing and overwhelming thought, especially in a society that fosters comfort and mediocrity. That leads me to my second point. History. The way we see history is, in my opinion, flawed. We see history as a game for the great man to gamble in. It is not that. In my opinion, history is a complex network of individual consciousnesses, like yours and like mine, and we are all equally important in the creation of the world we want to see. The moment we think of history as a game of great men, we give up our responsibility for the small part that we could have done, but we also give up our freedom. This leads me to my last point. So, how can we shift our perspective? First off, I want to point out that throughout history, in moments of great social change, the party, the social faction that was generating the change was generally socially ostracized. They were called naive, unsuitable for changing the world. It happened during the French Revolution, it happened during the American Civil War, it happened 2 days ago in the United States when people marched all over the country for better gun laws. But I'm here to tell you that the naive are not the ones who look for change, but those who think that change will never come at all. That is why I'm here to pledge for revolutionaries. I think that we should look up to them. People like Katherine Johnson, who was the first ever black woman mathematician, part of the first ever successful NASA mission. She went beyond what social constructs limited her and went on to make history. Same with Alan Turing, a gay man who lived during the 40s, who was the first ever computer scientist. Without him, our world would be fundamentally different. At the end of the day, I have a quote I want to share with you, which perfectly explains my point. In the appendix of his revolutionary treatise, Common Sense, Thomas Paine wrote, "We have it in our power to begin the world over." So I say, let's get to work. Thank you.
Knowing that today's society tries to generalize their public through trends or certain ways of thinking, why do you think being a different individual would affect, how do you think being a different individual would affect society itself?
Thank you for your very interesting question. I think that having a different point of view from the masses is always a healthy thing. It keeps the debate going, and we've seen in history the moment we take out the different opinions. You see, like the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century, basically we transform in a society that's very unhealthy for its inhabitants. So I think that having a different opinion inside the society or inside the group even is absolutely healthy, normal, and should be valued to the highest point possible. Thank you.
Yes?
So what, based on that, you spoke about history, historical facts. What is your opinion of autonomous parties, nationalist movements, and of the arrest of Carlos Puigdemont these days? So you see that change is healthy, and everybody has the right to make a change. But autonomy, the right for self-determination, is that also? What do you think?
So I believe, thank you for your question, it's very complex, and I believe, of course, I'm a child that has grown up during a democratic regime. So I really am a strong believer for free speech and democracy in general. And I think that taking a stand in each and every type of society is important as long as your stand is justified. So if it's not morally justified, or if it's not in accordance to the general moral flow of the society you're part of, it can become negative. So regarding the situation you named, I do not have a very clear opinion, but I would like to say that generally choosing the side of history on which your moral values stand is what I appreciate most. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
In the light of freedom of choice, how much do facts like the family in which you're born, the country in which you're born, the city in which you're born, influence your future?
I think, first of all, thank you for your question. And I think that they are fundamental. They are like, I think they're more important than your very genetic code, because they basically set up your whole entire life. But at the same time, after a certain period of life, when you become an independent human being, despite being somewhat restricted by your initial circumstances, you can still have a path that you yourself have created. Therefore, I do understand that privilege is really, privilege should raise debates in our society. But I also think that differences in social status, for example, do raise inspirational stories for us to follow, for example. So at the end of the day, I find the initial conditions very important, but at the same time, we cannot all be born into a very similar status, so we should learn how to work with them. Thank you for your question.
The oversimplified definition of the human life claims that it ends with your body. But a more sophisticated perspective takes into consideration the constant influence that the individual has in society, even after his death, based on the premise of choice impact. That is to say, one's choices, one's actions, one's effect on the world transcend reality because such aspects know no physical boundaries. And that's the best way to predict the future, inventing it by taking action and ultimately achieving life beyond death. Now, such endeavors require 3 fundamental stages of development in order to be achieved, but before that, I'm just going to start by giving you a picture of what I think this world looks like. It was 1960s in the United States, and African Americans were feeling the daily oppression that their country represents and the systemic disenfranchisement that they were put up against. All of them were united by an idea of equality, by a dream for a better tomorrow, and by the misery of their lives. All of them were hoping for something to change, but they stopped there. And then there was Martin. He did have that idea of an equality, and he sure had a dream of a better tomorrow. But funny thing about Martin is that he didn't stop at complaining. He took it in the streets, took action, and changed the face of the United States. Now, panel, this is key, and this is why I've named my speech Life Beyond Death. Because Martin Luther King may be dead, but he's living inside every African American that can walk the streets of Texas today without the fear of being spat on. Just as Rosa Parks or Simone de Beauvoir may be dead, but they're living inside every female who can call herself equal to men in the face of patriarchy. And for a more personal example, 2,000 people died in the Romanian Revolution, but they're living inside us today. People who can freely criticize their government's behavior without a fear of repercussions. This is fundamentally important, and this is why the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Now, what are the 3 fundamental steps that one has to take in order to invent the future that he wants? But before that, I would like to note that this kind of a mechanism is not a utopic cliché one. This cannot only be applied on privileged classes or people like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. This can be applied on the average person that lives his life. So the first step is called acknowledgement. One has to realize that he is probably not going to change the entire face of the world. Statistically speaking, the average person hasn't got the resources to fund SpaceX or to create the next Apple. So in that matter, why is this important? Because many times in life, when we try to do something beautiful, something good, and we're faced with any kind of a bump in the road, with people that take it for granted, usually we're demoralized and refuse to do something else. It's important for the average person to realize that the position that he's in. So in spite of this nihilistic approach, there comes the second step, which is called mad resilience. In the face of all those bad facts that may demotivate you, one has not to care. If you take a look on Nelson Mandela, he knew that he was going to be quickly silenced down when he was going to protest the apartheid regime in South Africa. But he didn't care about that. He still protested and got to be the role model of social minority movements. This is fundamentally important because self-defense, even when you're guaranteed to fail, is justified because the resistance of evil is a good in and of itself. Why is this specifically important? Because any kind of a change, any kind of a decision that actually had an impact was a long-term plan. And long-term plan requires a lot of consistency. You cannot just accept immediate benefits and condition your actions by them. You have to be consistent with your plan and go further. Now, these kind of two steps, which are more psychological, are conditioned by the third step, which is more of a cliché, taking action. I want you to take a look on how we constructed our human societies. If you notice, the main premise on which our social structures are based is the premise of interaction. On a daily level, we have friends which we talk to. This is the premise on which we base our school system. You have a teacher that is going to tell you things and you have to remember them. All of us hold this kind of a power, this kind of a capital in which you can talk to other people and influence the people that are next to you. So in that matter, what does one have to do? He should be the change that he wants to see in the world, in the light of Mahatma Gandhi. If you hope for a tomorrow in which people are kinder to each other, you should be kinder first yourself. Now, panel, I'm going to end with this because it's really, really important. Since the beginning of my speech, 500 people already died. I beg you to take action and not die as a statistic. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, one might argue that in order to obtain life after death, one might sacrifice his life before death, either literally or in a more figurative sense. Do you reckon that it is, however, always worthwhile to do so?
Depends. Funny thing about happiness is that it's really subjective. Many times, being happy and being good with each other and doing the right thing makes people happy. The thing that you said is a kind of a fallacy psychologically because it's called instant gratification, only looking for the short-term benefit. The thing that you have to do is to see beyond the short-term impact, beyond the short-term time, and you have to think about the long-term benefits, about your purpose in life. Because just as Martin Luther King or any person, your life might end in 80 years, but you have the chance in order to continue beyond that. You have the chance to change somebody and somehow live in the future. And that is the only thing that takes you further than 80 years of life in which you're conditioned to live. Thank you.
What is your opinion on the sentence, "Might is right"?
Okay, I've heard that question yesterday as well. I believe that the whole approach on how you should look at the moral thing or the right thing or anything like that should be from a utilitarian point of view. What brings the more benefits for the majority? I think that when you take a decision, principles like our religious principles or our social principles should be relevant if they're not conditioned by a benevolent impact on society. I believe that when you take a decision, you should think about who you're helping the most. Because this is how governments fundamentally work. They are trying to look at how do they help the vast majority of cases in the best form possible. So I believe that might is not right, utilitarian is right, because it makes the more people happy.
I admire your view on utilitarianism, but I would like to ask you, it's a great philosophical concept, but how do you solve the maths, especially in situations that are very relative from various points of view?
As from? This is the fundamental thing. Usually you have rights which contradict themselves. Many times in life you don't have decisions which are easy to go. Both decisions could be bad and have some bad impact. The fundamental thing that you have to take into consideration is to try and help the most vulnerable side. If you have free speech versus the right to live, you'll always prioritize the right to live because it's inherently bad. So yeah, doing maths is hard, but most important is to protect the rights of the vulnerable individuals, and that I think is fundamental. Thank you.
We're very happy to have you here today. Before handing out the certificates, The jury would like to give you some feedback.
Okay, yeah, congratulations to everybody. We had a wonderful time. My feedback is going to be very concise. I would like to say just a few things, mostly on the delivery of your speeches. And I'm going to say those few things because being in the back, it's a bit difficult to listen to people. So if you speak in a small voice, as some of you did today, that is something terrible. People will not, you miss an important part of your speech. So speak up, right? I hope you hear me in the back. And now I'm going to say a few things about the content. As you see, my colleague here is, probably you realize, being from the British school, that he's British. They will tell you that less is more. We teach you in the Romanian system of education, and quite a lot of you will come to the ASE or a different Romanian university. We teach you a lot, to say a lot in as little time as possible. No good. Don't listen to us. It's not a good advice. All right? Speak up, speak clearly, and say important things, not many things. That's very important. Some of you talked so quickly that I could really not follow you. So it's again a waste. Can I also say, check your facts? Some of the things that I heard over here today, I pretty sure think that they are mistakes. I'm not going to deal with that, but check your facts. It's important. You may have experts in the audience, right? The rest was great. All right.
Okay, so first of all, well done to everyone. It's not easy to speak publicly. It takes time. In my situation, I have to speak publicly quite often. Even 2 days ago, I was speaking into a conference of ambassadors, and I had to introduce each ambassador, and there were 7 or 8 ambassadors present. And then I had to speak at the Carol I Auditorium to an auditorium of 300 or 400. So I know that it's a skill that comes with time. No one's born with natural oratory skills. Everyone feels nervous, and I remember when I was in your situation as a high school student, I also made the final of a public speaking competition, and I remember how nervous I was standing on stage. It's a real skill to be able to hide that fear that's inside, welling up within, to try and fight it back. But there are some things you can do to make your life a little bit easier, and as Mariana said, it's very difficult to judge you and score you highly if the people who are judging you can't hear you clearly. And this is a final of a Romanian public speaking competition, and there were at least 4 or 5 of you speaking today that there were points where I could not hear you, and I was making notes just saying, cannot hear, missing parts of the speech. So you might have fantastic content, but if it doesn't reach the audience, it's not going to hit its mark. So some of you need to speak, I would think, a little bit more slowly. So whether it's the nervousness and you naturally speed up and the pace comes because you're nervous, or whether it's because it's your natural tempo and you're going to have to monitor that. Record yourself, play it back, listen, and try to work out what your natural tempo, your speed is. Because you might have to speak half the rate that you would normally speak with a friend when you're standing on the street having a conversation. And when we're speaking with friends, we normally speak like this really, really quickly because we're so excited about what they're going to say. And in fact, we can't even wait for them to finish what they want to say because we're so interested in what we're going to say. So I'm going to jump in and tell you what I'm going to say before you do. And it's like, so that's our natural pace when we're on the street speaking to each other. Speaking publicly is a very artificial situation. You have to speak very slowly. You have to imagine that the people in the room have a problem processing you. And because a lot of your content is well thought out, you've spent like weeks, maybe even months, writing speeches and going through them. So you get to a point where you know every aspect of their speech, every connotation, every association. And so it seems to you to flow together seamlessly. And it seems to you that everyone in the audience is going to be able to keep up with you as you're going through it. But everyone in the audience is receiving that information for the first time. And they're struggling to make the associations and the connotations that you've, what's the word? With genius, with a sense of personal rapport coming to put together. Not worded well. Okay, so you need to slow down. I think that's the first thing. Some of you need to speak a little more loudly. I think that's important. Body language, next thing. It's really important to stay on one spot. Some of you are sort of walking around, and you're probably thinking that you're addressing the audience by walking around, which can, for some people in a very limited number of situations, work. But what it tends to do is just to tire everyone out. And some of you are doing this, helping the planes to work out where they're going to land, which again, if you have two examples and you put up fingers to show everyone that you've got two examples, that might seem like a natural link to put together, and for some people it will work. But you tend to find that the very best public speakers, they keep their hands very calm. There may be times where they part their hands to show a sense of openness and a sense of warmth, to invite people in. So there will be a certain number of very limited hand signals. But don't gesticulate too aggressively. And don't show numbers and this and that and everything. Because even though it looks like you're choreographing your speech, what you want people to focus on is the words and not your body movements. So really keep your hands really calm and smooth. Keep them down at waist level, not up around the face anywhere. Okay? Hand movements can distract. So resist the temptation. And it's the first thing that shows nervousness is your hand signals and the way your hands are moving. So if you can learn to control your hands, your public speaking will come across with more confidence. Content. You're speaking in Romania, so to the best of your ability, try to make the content relevant to everybody in the room. So you have to think about the judges. And I say this to my students, especially in debating. If you want to win a debate, my students just went over to the World Debating Championships and they brought the silver plate back. They won the silver plate. And I said, the way you win a world championship is you debate the judges. You need everybody in the room to like you. So if you want to win a world championship in debating, the most important thing is to be debating when you're not debating. So when you're not debating the other team, you need to work out who the judges are. You need to ensure that the judges know you, and they personally like you and think, I really like that young man. He came up and asked me an interesting question. She was really lovely. Such a nice person. So that when you're in the room debating in front of them and you're being critical and harsh towards the other team, they realize actually that you're really nice people. And they realize that you're just doing that because that's part of the game you're playing in a debate. And public speaking and debating, the line is very fine. Debating is more difficult because you have to do it sort of ad lib off the top of your head. Whereas public speaking, you generally can practice it, refine it and get it perfect. So make sure you engage your audience. Your audience is Romanian. So it's great having your whole speech about America. But it's going to be very hard for people in the room to connect to America. And even if they connect to the dream of going to America and studying in America, your audience is still Romanian. And that's where ambassadors do such a good job. Because the Spanish ambassador will stand up in front of you and he will speak about his experience of Romania. And he will share that experience with you. And he won't spend 95% of his time speaking about Spain. Because one by one, you'll all switch off. And eventually he's lost the room. So, I think some of you can think a little bit more carefully about your content and think about who you're speaking to. Because, yes, this is a public speaking final, but it's also more than that. It's a chance for you to really have an impact on other people around you. So, yes, fundamentally you're coming here, you want to walk away with a trophy, and that's what your end goal is. But you've actually got a room of 40 or 50 people sitting in front of you who you can impact upon. And to me, these trophies you can go and buy for 50 RON. You can buy 100 of these and put them in your room, you know, and celebrate your wit and your success personally by awarding yourself, which I think probably is worth more than an award that anyone else can give you. You know, award yourself. So trophies are nothing more than just a piece of plastic. But a room of people in front of you, these are people you can influence. And this piece of plastic will soon disappear. You know, it'll get lost, you'll shift from one house to the next, and eventually, you know, that award that you won when you were 16, 17 years old, you won't be able to track it down again, it's gone. But if you made a friend today, and that is someone you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. So the trophy actually, for me, and it's what I try to explain to my students, the trophies are the people in the room next to you. These are the people who will help you. They'll carry you through life. They'll make you feel better when you feel terrible. And looking at a plastic trophy on a shelf is not going to make you feel better. You know, it's a person. So concentrate on the people in the room. Talk to the people in the room. And try and connect with them by thinking about what is it that I could share with them that would be meaningful for them. And the person who won today's competition did that better than anyone else. A lot of you spoke, but very few of you connected. And if you don't connect, then you cannot be a successful public speaker. And that uncomfortable pause is important, that I just made you all sustain. You've got to learn to just stop and let it sink in. Let the room go completely silent and be comfortable with that. And the moment you get there, you will be a truly great public speaker. And whilst you're trying to fill up the room to make yourself feel comfortable with the sound of your own voice, because that's basically what we do when we're nervous, we go you're trying to think of the next question because you don't want that uncomfortable silence. So while you're talking to someone, you're already thinking of the next question. And if you're already thinking of the next question, you're not actually listening to the other person anymore. It's not a conversation, it's a monologue. There's two people having monologues at each other, and neither of them are listening to each other. Public speaking can be the same. Now, the conversation you're having with the people in the room, it may not be one which is oral in terms of you can hear them speaking. But you've all studied public speaking, so you know that body language is 95% of communication. So if I suddenly see this young man on his phone, it means there's no value in it for him anymore. He's turned off. He's looking at his phone now. I've just lost one. Now there's 4 people looking at their phones. Now I can blame technology, but if my speech was half decent, no one in that room would be on a phone. So the next time you're public speaking, start to look at all the people you're speaking to. Try and connect with them all individually. You know, did you manage to look at each person in the eye at least once during your speech? And the people at the back of the room, you know, did they see you looking at them? You know, did they feel a personal connection? You know, if you're looking in the room and you just made 3 people smile because you looked at them directly, you know, that's a gift. You've really connected. That is public speaking. If every single person in this room walks out and you gave them a feeling by looking at them, by telling them something that was important to them, it really doesn't matter if you walk out with that. Because 30 or 40, or in this case maybe 50 people in this room will remember you. And the test of time is, how long do they remember you for? You know, how many remember you when they go to sleep? Okay, you're down to 80%. You're still a pretty good speaker. How many remember you when they're having breakfast tomorrow? Okay, down to 65%. Other things more important. And as you go through, and how many people remember you in a week? Well, you have these amazing speakers, you know, the Martin Luther Kings, the Malcolm X's, the Gandhis, JFK. Yeah, I'm not sure about JFK. Good speaker. And that brings you to another point. Most speakers who are remembered in time, they didn't write their speech. You know, JFK's speech wasn't written by him. I think it was like Ted Sorensen or something, I forget who wrote it, but it was written for him, which is why when he's giving his speech, An imperative comes out like it's a question, or a question comes out like an imperative. But it's too late. I've just said it now, and I didn't realize that was a question. Oh, okay. Should have been rising instead of falling. So, most political speeches get their speech given to them hours before, and they go through just trying to get it sort of as close to sounding natural as they can. And then the final point for me. Sorry, it's been a bit longer, but some of you do need to think about these things. And the final point is, speeches have three purposes. One is to inform. Really boring speeches to inform. It's like reading a phone book or instructions on how to work this vacuum cleaner. You just want it to actually vacuum the floor itself. It's like the last thing you want to do is have to put it together and then vacuum it yourself. So informative speeches don't tend to be very interesting unless everybody in the room is a specialist. So if I'm talking to you about computer science and I'm talking to you about the latest application that's about to be released, you're all going to be terribly interested because it relates to you. But when you're speaking to a random room, the chance that people are going to click into your topic is very, very low. So most of you are giving informative speeches, and informative speeches don't work. But they're the easiest, so that's probably why you choose them. The next level of speeches is speeches that are there to persuade. But you can only persuade people if there's something you want them to do at the end of the speech. And great speechwriters, they begin with what they want the people in the room to do after the speech, and they work backwards. Like exams. You look at the exam, work out what it is, and then you work backwards to make sure you've covered all the content for the exam. So, some of you need to do that. You need to think, there's all these people I'm speaking to, what do I want them to do when they leave the room today? But for half of you, you didn't want them to do anything. You just wanted them to listen to you while you were speaking, and then that was it. And that's why your speech will never be remembered, because there was nothing for them to do. But if you're asking people to go out and do something, and it's something that is concrete, then there's a chance they'll remember you. And if you want them to remember you, repeat it again and again and again. In debating, a team has to have a team line. It's the first downfall of any team, is that they don't have a team line. And he or she who repeats the team line the most generally wins the debate. Because at the end of the debate, the judges are plagued by their team line. It just comes through so strong. And the third speech, it is the most difficult. And nobody succeeded today. It is the most difficult because it's so hard to do. You can inform, very easy to do. Not that everyone's going to listen to you. You can persuade if you're very clear about what you are saying and you have conviction. And if you believe it, it's more likely that the audience will believe it. So don't try to persuade unless you're trying to persuade them something that you're completely sold on yourself. If you're going to try and sell someone a Dacia, convincing them that it's a Porsche or a Lamborghini, it's going to be a tough road for you. But if you're a great salesperson, maybe you'll do it. The third and the final, which is the hardest, is to entertain. And to entertain, you have to understand your audience. What makes them laugh? You laughing doesn't make them laugh. So if you want to entertain your audience, it's the same as when you're giving a speech. Watch your audience and listen to their body language. If you want to entertain people, you need to think about what it is that entertains people. And those people who are stand-up comedians, they spend years perfecting that. They read books on it. They watch videos. They look at where the punchlines come and how they connect the first sentence to the last sentence of their speech in a way that interests people and kind of tantalizes their thoughts, etc., etc. So maybe next year we'll see some speeches that entertain, but they are the most difficult, and I'm not recommending you do it. They are the most difficult because humor is so individual. And what makes 3 people laugh might actually offend another 3 people. So in trying to entertain and be humorous, it is the riskier. But they are also the speeches we remember. And if you've got the whole room in hysterics, then again, you're probably going to find that, like an Irish debate, you'll win the day. So, less informative speeches next year, more persuasive speeches where they're going to do something when they leave the room and you speak with conviction. And maybe some of you might do do a bit of extra study, watch comedy, stand-up comedy, and look at some of the great speakers of the world and think, how did they entertain the audience? And how did, at that time where everyone was laughing, what was it that they said? Because that's a universal formula, and what made them laugh at that point will make anybody laugh at any point. It is universal. And with that said, as the results come out, I wish you all the very best, because in the end, you've made the final of a country speaking competition. To make the final of your school is one thing. To make the final of a regional is another. So the fact that you're all here representing your schools and your regions, it's really enough. It already shows that you're in the elite group of 14 students in Romania. So you've achieved enough just to be here today. And those who walk away with trophies, well, you're lucky. But, and I'm sorry for those of you who won't be walking away with trophies, because you're probably that close away. And that's the difference between success. And in the 100 meters in the Olympics, it's less than 1/100th of a second. And in debating, it's no different. So thank you. Thank you to my co-judge, Mariana, and to Alan. Mostly thank you to you. You're very entertaining.
We'll start with the certificates of participation. The first one going to Mihaela Nikita.
Do you want them all to stay here or one at a time?
No, one at a time.
And then they'll come back at the end for the photos?
Yeah. The second certificate goes to Ana Cristina Carica. The third one goes to Yulia Bragin. The fourth certificate of participation goes to Andreea Valeria Atanasescu. So we're moving to the honorable mentions. Mihai Tordai. Andy Ștefan Plăiașu. Roxana Pascu. Dragoș Lipan. The third prize goes to Ana Maria Țăranu. Another third prize goes to Caroli Hegedus. Another third prize goes to Cezar Mihail Daciciu.
Can we just mention something? No, just go to your place. It's okay. It's just about an organizational issue. If you are wondering why some people got their cups and the others do not, it's because I think you mentioned it already. They have not been ready, but everybody on the second and first, no, not on the third and second prize will get their cups. All right, in due time.
Yeah, so if you, because there's only, originally the idea would be one first, one second, one third, but then at the last moment they said, let's give out 2 seconds and 2 thirds, and suddenly there weren't enough trophies for everyone. So it means we need to order 1 more second and 2 more thirds. So it's the first year they've ever given out sort of 3 runs. Basically, what is it, 6 trophies. Normally you give out 3, so they should be here by this afternoon or tomorrow at the latest.
And this was a stratagem to delay the announcement of the rest of the prizes.
The second prize goes to Andrei Nistorescu. Another second prize goes to Roxana Halați. And the first prize, and the one who goes to London, is Mira Pop. So thank you all for today. We invite all participants to come here in front to make some